Hello and welcome everyone. Here is Andy. Here's our bonfire, and I'm now recording a special episode where we're going to be only reading the journal entries and nothing else, just because I think I don't have enough time to have a fully fledged stream, especially that we are very close to finishing the game, and I would hate to hurry through the end game and to hastily complete all the choices, to make all the choices to complete the quests, and then rush through some decision making maybe. And we also always watch the credits, and I don't want to finish my stream somewhere deep at night, deep in the night. And so I thought we can just peacefully spend our time together reading the remaining journal entries. You can see that some suspicious pluses appeared in the top left corners of my character portraits. That's because I spent all the money that I had to buy elf fruits and donated those elf fruits to elves in the camp, and so I got 2 levels for the warden, and I think 2 levels per each other character. Alistair got 2 levels, Wynne got... So yeah, they all got plus 2 levels, but I don't want to spend time on assigning their ability points and skill points now. I'll do that when I run a legit stream. That will be, I think, more proper. And now we'll purely focus on the journal with the music, the beautiful music from Calenhad, from the lake. Yeah, let me just check that the recording is going well. It seems that yes. And let me open the journal and see what we have. I think it will take us like half an hour, maybe a bit more, maybe a bit less, like last time, I'm not sure. Let's begin with, let's go chronologically. Magic and religion. Apostates. It's not uncommon for the neophyte to mistake apostates and modificarum as one and the same. Indeed, the chantry has gone to great lengths over the centuries to establish that this is so. The truth, however, is that while an apostate is often a maleficar, he need not be so. A maleficar is a mage who employs forbidden knowledge such as blood magic and the summoning of demons, whereas an apostate is merely any mage who doesn't fall under those auspices of the Circle of Magi, and therefore the chantry. They're hunted by the Templars, and quite often they will turn to forbidden knowledge in order to survive, but it would be a lie to say that all apostates begin that way. Historically, apostates became such in one of the 2 ways. They are either mages who have escaped from the circle of mages, or mages who were never part of it to begin with. The latter category includes what we tend to refer to as Hajj mages, those with magical ability out in the hinterlands who follow a different magical tradition than our own. Some of these Hajj mages are not even aware of their nature. Undeveloped. Their abilities can express themselves in a variety of ways, which the Hajj mage might attribute to faith or will or to another being entirely, depending on his nature. Some of these traditions are passed down from generation to generation, as with the so-called witches of the Chasing Wilders or the shamans of the Avar barbarians. No matter how a mage has become apostate, the chantry treats them alike. Templars begin a systematic hunt to bring the apostate to justice. In almost all cases, justice is execution. If there is some overriding reason the mage should live, the right of tranquility is employed instead. Whether we of the Circle of Magi believe the system fair is irrelevant. It is what it is. From Patterns Within Form by Halden, first enchanter of Starkhaven, 880 Blessed. The founding of the chantry. Cordelius Draken, king of the city-state of Orlais, was a man of uncommon ambition. In the year -15 Ancient, the young king began construction of a great temple dedicated to the Maker, and declared that by its completion he wouldn't only have united the warring city-states of the south, he would have brought Andrastian belief to the world. In -3 Ancient, the temple was completed. There, in its heart, Draken knelt before the eternal flame of Andraste and was crowned ruler of the empire of Orlais. He first acted as emperor to declare the Chantry the established and resting religion of the empire. It took 3 years and several hundred votes before Olesa of Montesimort was elected to lead the new Chantry. Upon her coronation as divine, she took the name Justinia in honor of the disciple who recorded Andraste's songs. In that moment, the ancient era ended and the divine age began. From Ferelden, Folklore and History, by Sister Petrine, Chantry scholar. Blood Magic, the Forbidden School. Foul and corrupt are you, who have taken my gift and turned it against my children. Transfigurations 1810. The ancient Tevinters didn't originally consider blood magic a school of its own. Rather, they saw it as a means to achieve greater power in any school of magic. The name, of course, refers to the fact that magic of this type uses life, specifically in the form of blood, instead of mana. It was common practice at one time for a magister to keep a number of slaves on hand so that, should he undertake the working of a spell that was physically beyond his abilities, he could use the blood of his slaves to bolster the casting. Over time, however, the Imperium discovered types of spells that could only be worked by blood. Although Lyrium will allow a mage to send his conscious mind into the Fade, blood would allow him to find the sleeping minds of others, view their dreams, and even influence or dominate their thoughts. Just as treacherous, blood magic allows the veil to be opened completely so that demons may physically pass through it into our world. The rise of the Chant of Light and the subsequent fall of the Old Imperium has led to blood magic being all but stamped out, as it should be, for it poses nearly as great a danger. Nearly as great a danger to those who would practice it as to the world at large. From the four schools, a treatise by first enchanter Josephus. Magic and religion almost over. Interestingly, there are 5 items that are missing. Why? Culture and history. Antiva. In the rest of the civilized world, it is common belief that Antiva has no king. I assure you, gentle readers, that this is untrue. The line of kings in Antiva has remained unbroken for 2,500 years. It's simply that nobody pays any attention to them whatsoever. The nation is ruled in truth by a collection of merchant princes. They are not princes in the literal sense, but heads of banks, trading companies, and vineyards. Their power is conferred strictly by wealth. But Antiva is not primarily renowned for its peculiar form of government, nor for its admittedly unparalleled wines. Antiva is known for the House of Crows. Since Antivians are well known for being good at everything but fighting, it's more than a little ironic that Antiva possesses the most deadly assassins in the world. Their fame is such that Antiva keeps no standing army, no king is willing to order his troops to assault her borders, and no general is mad enough to lead such an invasion. The attack would likely succeed, but its leaders would not see the day. From In Pursuit of Knowledge, The Travels of a Chantry Scholar by Brother Ginny TV. The Avars. Driven across the Frostbacks in ancient times, the Alamari tribesmen split into 3 groups. One settled the Ferelden Valley, one was pushed into the Korcari Wilds, and the last returned to the mountains. Modern Fereldans bear little resemblance to their Alamari ancestors, and the Chazent remember few of their traditions, but Avars have changed little throughout the ages. Like the Chazent, the Avars are not a united people. Each tribe fends for itself and is beholden only to its Thane. They still follow their own gods. Korth, the Mountain Father, Hakon, Winter's Breath, the Lady of the Skies, as well as dozens of animal gods never named to outsiders. Nothing lasts in the mountains. Wind and rain eventually eat away the strongest holds. Valleys that were arable one generation are locked in year-round ice the next. Interesting word. Game is constantly on the move. Even among themselves, the Avars make no absolute promises. They wed by tradition in which the groom struggles to unite a tightly knotted rope while the bride sings a hymn to one of the gods. However many knots he has undone by the time her song ends is the number of years she will spend with him. Lowlanders often forget that there is no such thing as a permanent alliance in the Frostbacks. From Ferelden, Folklore and History by Sister Petrine, Chantry Scholar. The Bannorn. The central Ferelden Valley has always been a paradox. No single band holds more than a few dozen leagues of farmland, yet together they govern a greater territory than all the Terrans and Arls combined. This collection of independent bands is known as the Bannorn, and it's the heart of Ferelden politics. No person has ever sat upon the throne of Ferelden without first winning the approval of the Bannorn. Queen Fionn, who had the misfortune to take the throne in the 18th year of the Steel Age, wrote of the Bannorn. There have been 3 wars this year fought over elopements. 5 foot over wool, and one started 5 fought. So 3 wars this year fought over elopements, 5 fought over wool, and one started by an apple tree. It isn't even winter yet. Who would believe that these same bands, now trying so hard to kill one another, just last year united to give me the crown? From Ferelden, Folklore and History by Sister Petrine, Chantry Scholar. Theda's Calendar. For most good folk, the details of our calendar have little purpose. It's useful only for telling them when the summer day festival will be held, when the snows are expected to begin, and when the harvest must be complete. The naming of the years are a matter for historians and taxmen, and few, if pressed, could even tell you the reason that our current age is named after dragons. It is 930 Dragon Age, the 30th year of the 9th age since the crowning of the Chantry's first divine. Each age is exactly 100 years, within the next age's name chosen in the 99th year. The scholars in Valar Yo advise the Chantry of portents seen in that 99th year, and Chantry authorities pore over the research for months before the divine announces the name of the imminent age. The name is said to be an omen of what is to come, of what the people of Thedas will face for the next 100 years. The current age wasn't meant to be the Dragon Age. Throughout the last months of the Blast Age, the Chantry was preparing to declare the Sun Age, named for the symbol of their Legion Empire, which at that time sprawled over much of the south of Thedas and controlled both Ferelden and what is now Nivara. It was to be a celebration of our Legion imperial glory. But as the rebellion in Ferelden reached a head and the Battle of River Dane was about to begin, a peculiar event occurred, a rampage, the rising of a dreaded High Dragon. Dragons had been thought practically extinct since the days of the Nivaran dragon hunts, and they say that to see this great beast rise from the Frostbacks was both majestic and terrifying. As the rampage began and the High Dragon decimated the countryside in its search for food, the elderly divine Faustine II abruptly declared the Dragon Age. Some say the divine was declaring support for Orlais in the battle against Ferelden, since the dragon is an element of the Dufayel family heraldry of King Magran, the so-called usurper king of Ferelden. Be that as it may, the High Dragon's rampage turned towards the Legion side of the Frostback Mountains, killing hundreds and sending thousands more fleeing to the northern coast. The Ferelden rebels won the Battle of River Dane, ultimately securing their independence. Many thus think that the Dragon Age will come to represent a time of violent and dramatic change for all of Thedas. It remains to be seen. From the Studious Theologian by Brother Genitivi, Chantry Scholar 925 Dragon. The Free Marches. The Free Marches are not a kingdom, nor even a nation in the most basic sense. People from that region dislike even being lumped together as marchers. Rather, they are a collection of independent city-states, united only when it suits them. In this respect, they resemble the Bannorn before the arrival of King Calenhad. Because of this, the Free Marches have no capital, and what passes for a central government exists only sporadically, a sort of landsmeet that convenes only during times of crisis. I arrived in time for the grand tourney while it was on in Tantervale, a remarkable sight indeed. I saw Alvar Hillsmen test their mettle against Orlesian chevaliers, riders from the Underfells buying Nivaran cavalry horses, and Tevan craftsmen selling their wares to the winter mages. All of Thedas was on display. From In Pursuit of Knowledge, The Travels of a Chantry Scholar by Brother Genitivi. Oh gosh, how many more there are. The Frostback Mountains. Even mountains had a heart once. When the world was young, Korth the Mountain Father kept his throne at the peak of Belenas, the mountain that lies at the center of the world, from which he could see all the corners of earth and sky. And he saw strong men become weak, brave men grow cowardly, and wise men turn foolish for love. Korth devised a plan that he might never be betrayed by his own heart, by taking it out and hiding it where no soul would ever dare search for it. He sealed it inside a golden cask, buried it in the earth, and raised around it the fiercest mountains the world had ever seen, the Frostbacks, to guard it. But without his heart the Mountain Father grew cruel. His chest was filled with bitter mountain winds that shrieked and howled like lost souls. Food lost its flavor, music had no sweetness, and he lost all joy in deeds of valor. He sent avalanches and earthquakes to torment the tribes of men. Gods and men rose against him, calling him a tyrant, but with no heart, Korth could not be slain. Soon there were no heroes left, either among men or gods, who would dare challenge Korth. The Lady of the Skies sent the best of her children, the swiftest, the cleverest, the strongest flyers, to scour the mountains for the missing heart, and for year and a day they searched. But sparrow and raven, vulture and eagle, swift and albatross returned to her with nothing. Then the ptarmigan spoke up and offered to find the god chief's heart. The other birds laughed, for the ptarmigan is a tiny bird, too humble to soar, which spends half its time hopping along the ground. The lady would not give the little creature her blessing, for the mountains were too fierce even for eagles, but the ptarmigan set out anyway. The little bird traveled deep into the Frostbacks. When she couldn't fly, she crawled. She hugged the ground and weathered the worst mountain winds, and so made her lonely way to the valley where the heart beat. With all the gods' terrible deeds, the heart was far too heavy for the tiny bird to carry, so she rolled it little by little out of the valley and down a cliff, and when the golden cask struck the earth, it shattered. The heart was full almost to bursting, and the pain of it roused the mountain god to come see what had happened. When Korth neared his heart, it leapt back into his chest, and he was whole again. Then Hakon Winter's Breath bound Korth's chest with 3 bands of iron and 3 bands of ice, so it could never again escape. And all the remaining gods named the ptarmigan, honored above even the loftiest eagles. The ptarmigan and of our tale from Ferelden, Folklore and History by Sister Petrine, Chantry Scholar. Do I pronounce the bird correctly? I would hate to discover now that the pronunciation was wrong all along. Ptarmigan. Ptarmigan is the pronunciation. I'm sorry, ptarmigan. Should have checked right away. Wouldn't look like a fool now. Well, the more I live, the more I learn, I guess. Ptarmigan. And the translation is... I see. So it's like a grouse. Okay. The next one. King Merrick Teirin. It's difficult to separate the man from the myth. The last survivor of the bloodline of King Calenhad, the Silver Knight, Merrick drove the Orlesian forces from Ferelden's borders, reclaimed the throne, and freed our people from foreign tyranny, all true and all larger than life. He was born in hiding near Cathal's Crossing to the rebel Queen Moira, and grew up in the rebel camps an outlaw in his own country. When the rebel queen died, Merrick inherited her homeless nobles, malcontents, and displaced freeholders, and with the aid of his friend Logain MacTyr, built them into an army. After the pivotal battle of River Dane, Merrick took the throne. He married Rowan, daughter of Randor and Gyrene, Earl of Redcliffe, and began the long, slow process of rebuilding everything Orlais had demolished during 70 years of occupation. From Ferelden, Folklore and History by Sister Petrine, Chantry Scholar. So, he married Rowan, daughter of Randon Gyrene, Earl of Redcliffe. I wonder if Earl Eamon is his who? His brother-in-law? I suppose. Lake Calenhad. The waters of Lake Calenhad are steeped in legends. The Avar people say that it was once the site of Belenas, the mountain which stood at the center of the world, from which Korth, the mountain father, surveyed the earth and sky. But it was destroyed in the battle between Korth and the serpent Nothrmar, leaving only a vast crater behind. When the Lady of the Sky saw that Belenas was gone, she wept, and her tears filled the crater, making the lake. The Tevinters believed that the water of the lake Calenhad were blessed by Razikael, god of the mysteries, and that those who drank from them were granted special insights. This was why they built a great tower on an island in the middle of the lake, hoping the powers of the lake would aid their magical research. But most of us know the legend of King Calenhad, which gives the place its name. It is said that Calenhad Therin spent a year and a day in the Tower of the Magi. Each day he drew a single cup full of water from the lake and carried it to the formary at the top of the tower. By magic, each cup of water was forged into a single ring of the male armor the circle gave to Calenhad. In that armor, made from the lifeblood of the land itself, no blade could strike him, no arrow pierce him, so long as he stood on Ferelden soil. From Thedas, Myths and Legends by Sister Petrine, Chantry Scholar. The Old Gods. Dumat, the dragon of silence, Zazikel, the dragon of chaos, Thoth, the dragon of fire, Endoral, the dragon of slaves, Urthamiel, the dragon of beauty, Razikael, the dragon of mystery, and Lusakan, the dragon of night. There were 7 old gods, great winged dragons that were said to rule over the ancient world. The Chantry maintains that they are responsible for the original sin, that they turned humanity away from its true creator through deceit. Humanity's faith faltered, and thus the Maker turned away from the world, but not before trapping the old gods in eternal prisons beneath the earth as punishment. Scholars assume that the old gods must indeed have been real at one point, but most agree that they were likely actual dragons, ancient high dragons of a magnitude not known today, and impressive enough to frighten ancient peoples into worshipping them. Some even claim that these dragons slumber as a form of hibernation, not as a result of the Maker's wrath. Regardless of the truth, legend maintains that even from the underground prisons, the old gods were able to whisper into the minds of men. The Archon Thelsian, first of the Magisters, who claimed to have contacted the old god Dumat, used the blood magic Dumat taught to him to attain incredible power in Tevinter and declare himself the ruler of the empire. In return, he established the first temples worshipping the old gods, and the dragons became equated everywhere with imperial power. To date, 4 of the old gods are said to have risen as corrupted archdemons. Dumat, the first and most powerful, was slain at the Battle of Silent Fields. Zazikel fell at the Battle of Starkhaven. Thoth died at the Battle of Hunterfell, and Endoral was felled by Garahel, the legendary Grey Warden, at the Battle of Aislay. The archdemons have been identified only after years of argument among scholars, and to this day it's unclear whether the archdemons were truly old gods and not simply dragons. All that is known is that the Dragspawn hunt for them deep underground. If they are truly the old gods, as many scholars believe, then we have only 3 blights remaining. When all the gods have risen and been slain, however, what will happen? Will the blights end forever and humanity earn forgiveness from the Maker at last? We shall see. From the Old Gods Rise Again by Sister Mary, Chantry Scholar, 850 Blessed. The Religion Empire. There are many lords and ladies in Val-Ryo, and I mean this literally. Once, the system of noble titles in Orlais was labyrinthine. There were barons and baroness and baronots. There were barons and barons and barons and baronets, I guess, and sir-barons, and a horde of others, each with its own origins and its own nuances of comparison. The religion aristocracy is ancient and much given to competition. All the nobility play the grand game, as it is known, whether they wish it or not. It is a game of reputation and patronage, where moves are made with rumors and scandal is the chief weapon. No gentle game this. More blood has been drawn as a result of the grand game than any war the religions have fought. Of this I am assured by almost every gentleman here. As far as titles went, everything changed with the coming of Emperor Draken, who established the Orlesian Empire as it exists now, and who created the Chantry. There is no more venerated figure in Orlais. In Val Royeaux, the statue of Draken stands as tall as the statue of Andraste. Draken determined that the grand game was tearing Orlais apart, so he abolished all titles besides his own and Lord and Lady. I am told with some twittering amusement that this action didn't end the grand game as Draken had intended. Now the lords and ladies collected unofficial titles rather than official ones, such as the exalted patron of Tassus Clay or uncle to the champion of tramps. It is a headache to remember such titles, and one winces to think of the poor doorman at the walls who must rattle them off as each guest enters the room. The aristocracy is different from Ferelden in other ways as well. The Orlesians' right to rule stems directly from the Maker. There exists neither the concept of rule by merit nor the slightest notion of rebellion. If one is not noble, one aspires to be, or at least aspires to be in the good graces of a noble, and is ever watching for a way to enter the patronage of those better placed in the grand game. If one is not a noble, one aspires to be, or at least aspires to be in the good graces of a noble. And then there are the masks and the cosmetics. Haven't seen so much paint since the kennels at Highever, but that is another story. From Beyond the Frostbacks by Ben Theoric of West Hill 920 Dragon. And now we go to Orzammar. The casteless. The caste system in Orzammar includes many groups of privilege, the nobility and the warriors above all others, but to a lesser degree the merchants, the smiths, and the miners. Tradition establishes a clear hierarchy, but as in any culture with an upper class, there is also a clear underclass. These unfortunates, the so-called casteless, are believed to be descendants of criminals and other undesirables. They have been looked down upon since Orzammar's foundation. They have taken up residence in a place called Dusttown, a crumbling ruin on the fringe of Orzammar's common areas. Orzammar society considers these casteless lower than even the servant caste. Indeed, the casteless are not allowed to become servants, as it is too honorable a position. They are seen as little better than animals, their faces branded at birth to mark them as the bastard children of the kingdom. The home district, little more than a slum, is a haven for crime, organized and otherwise. Orzammar's guards seemingly cannot be bothered to patrol its streets. The best that the most casteless dwarves can hope for is a life at the whim of a local crime lord, ended abruptly by violence or an overabundance of toxic like an ale. Even so, there is some hope for the casteless, a dangling rope that offers a way up into greater Orzammar society. Since a dwarf's caste is determined by the parent of the same sex, the male child of a nobleman is part of that noble's house and caste. Strangely, it's acceptable for casteless women to train in the arts of courtly romance to woo nobles and warriors. They are known as noble hunters. Any male born from such a union is considered a joyous event, considering the low rate of dwarven fertility. The mother and the entire family are then taken in by the father's house, although they retain their caste. The dwarves we know on the surface are also considered casteless once they leave Orzammar, although this is only relevant to those who return, if they are allowed to return at all. Dwarves who leave for the surface, the sun-touched, as they are often called behind their backs, lose their connection to the stone and the favor of the ancestors, and thus are worthy of little more than pity, for upon dying they are said to be lost to the stone forever. Put that way, it seems a sad existence indeed. From Stone Halls of the Dwarves by Brother Genitivi, Chantry Scholar. Life in Orzammar. The dwarves of Orzammar are quite unlike those found in most human cities. Although Orzammar derives its vast wealth from trade with human kingdoms, all dwarves who come to the surface to trade are stripped of their position in society. Dwarven merchants are so ubiquitous in human cities that many people labor under the impression that all dwarves are merchants, or that their whole race worships coin and trade. But these surface dwarves are atypical creatures, the ones willing to give up all ties to their kin and sacrifice their rank in order to conduct business. Below ground, the dwarves are a people obsessed with honor, their own and that of their family. Most nobles incorporate chainmail even into formal gowns because the slights and insults often turn deadly. There are people who revere excellence and strive to achieve it in all things. Even members of the servant caste have been elevated to paragons, usually posthumously in recognition of remarkable service. From In Pursuit of Knowledge, The Travels of a Chantry Scholar by Brother Genitivi. Deep Roads. There isn't a dwarf alive who remembers the deep roads as they once were. They were the network of tunnels that joined the Taiks together. To be honest, it isn't even right to give them such a simple term as tunnels. They are works of art, with centuries of planning demonstrated in the geometry of their walls, with the statues of the paragons that watch over travelers, with the flow of lava that keeps the deep roads lit and warm. That cloud gazers up on the surface talk of the imperial highway built by the magisters of old, a raised walkway that crossed thousands of miles, something that could only have been built by magic. Perhaps it is comparable to the deep roads, although we dwarves didn't need magic. I suppose it doesn't matter anymore. The Darkspawn ruled the deep roads now. When Orzammar sealed off the entrances to the deep roads, abandoning everything that lay out there, we handed over the kingdom that was to those black bastards forever. To think that there are genlocks crawling over Bonomar now, tearing down our statues and defiling our greatest works. Corruption covers everything we built out there. Every dwarf who goes out and comes back says that it gets worse with each passing year. The foulness spread a little further. And the cloud gazers think that Darkspawn are gone just because they aren't spilling out onto the surface. One day, when Orzammar is gone for good, they'll find out differently. Those Darkspawn won't have anywhere else to go but up, and they will do it. The surface folk will have themselves a blight that will never end. Transcript of a conversation with a member of the Dwarven mining caste, 890 blessed. Cut to Kalsharok. 1000... it's the year. 1155 of the Tevinter Imperium will be known as a year of painful decisions, but we cannot waver. The threat we face is the greatest we have known. If we are overrun, all trace of the ancestors' glory will be undone. Orzammar must stand, and it must stand alone. Hormak, Kalsharok, Gondar, we have lost contact and must assume their loss to the Horde. We must seal the weakest link in our defense, the deep roads that lead to our fallen brethren. I have ordered our finest demolitionists to place the charges. I ask that each of you think of those we have lost. They served as the warning that spurred us to action, and I know the stone will embrace them. They are the foundation of our survival, and they will not be forgotten. From a proclamation by High King 3 Stone. 200 years. Kalsharok lives, you stone-forsaken deep lords. There is no greater hatred than a brother at your throat. Graffiti author unknown. There is no greater hatred than a brother at your throat. Legion of the Dead. Yes, Stone's greetings, friend. You will fight ceaselessly in the Legion of the Dead. Motto of the Legion of the Dead. The Legion accepts all. So I was told by one of the legionnaires himself, a dwarf who waited quietly at the entrance to the deep roads for the rest of his unit to assemble. They gathered slowly, each equipped with heavy armor and fine weapons, each painted with grim tattoos applied to their funerals the night previous. For that is the nature of the Legion. They are all dead. Any dwarf may join the Legion so long as he is willing to give up everything he has. The funeral rites are somber. A final goodbye is said to family and loved ones, any material goods are dispersed to heirs, and last words are said, and then it is done. The new legionnaire marches out into the deep roads, never to return. The Legion fights against the Darkspawn to the last, striking one final blow against the monsters that have claimed so much of their homeland. Many join the Legion to clear the slate. Criminals join to avoid punishment. The dishonored join so that their houses and families need not suffer on their behalf. The bankrupted join so their debts might be forgiven. A very few join for a last chance at glory, but the Legion takes them too. This group hopes to reach the fabled fortress of Bonomar, once the Legion's home, associated with the greatest of the paragons. Bonomar is a holy place. Its loss, the great blow against the dwarven kingdoms, and its recapture would be a glorious signal to all of Orzammar. But capture it or no, all of these warriors will die in the deep roads. It's a sobering thought, and I now know why the dwarves say that legions charge in the battlefield's most frightening sight. Is the battlefield's most frightening sight. They have nothing left to lose. From Stone Halls of the Dwarves by Brother Genitivi, Chantry Scholar. House Educan, Shield of Orzammar. The Assembly has never named the Paragon with so little disagreement as there was for Paragon Educan. No naysayers, only a single abstention. His worthiness was unquestionable, his favor with the ancestors clear. But family rumor says that the man himself was deeply troubled, prone to fits of melancholy and self-doubt. Never satisfied with his great achievement in protecting Orzammar, he died cursing that he hadn't managed to save the outlying Taigs. Before he rose to Paragon, he was of little note. The memories tell us that he never entered a single proving, never sought to elevate his place among the warrior caste. He spent most of his years prior to the First Blight fighting skirmishes in the deep roads, keeping them free from the surface bandits, content to live quietly with his wife and daughters. When the blight began, it caught Orzammar in the midst of a vicious inter-house war. Most of the warriors' caste was caught up in the feuding, for as word of attacks poured in, each great house demanded that the army be sent to defend their Taig, and no house would agree to sacrifice their own holdings for the safety of any others. The assembly was so utterly tied up with the infighting that the Darkspawn spread unchecked to the gates of Orzammar herself. In the chaos, Educan grudgingly took command of the armies. He enlisted the Taig of the mining caste to collapse overrun passages, called upon the smith caste to supply them with arms, and bypassed the assembly and the nobles entirely. With his leadership, Orzammar was saved from annihilation. For his insubordination, he was made Paragon, yet he always considered it a defeat. From A History of Educan, Paragon King, Peacemaker, by scholar Gertak. The Paragons. As I studied among the dwarfs, I became aware that their social system was as rigid as the stone that surrounded them. The lowest servant to the king of Orzammar, each dwarf has a caste, a rigid social standing which dictates what he may do and what he may do. I read it again. From the lowest servant to the king of Orzammar, each dwarf has a caste, a rigid social standing which dictates what he may do and how he may do it. What fascinated me then was that dwarves, stubborn and proud as they may be, have built in a way for even the lowliest dwarf to bypass the caste system and reach prominence. Maybe have built in a way for even the lowliest dwarf to bypass the caste system and reach prominence. Long sentences, very small font, hard to understand how to intone the sentence. Any dwarf who has made an achievement of significance can be named Paragon, elevating the dwarf above all others. To become a Paragon is to be recognized as essentially a living ancestor. Your words are considered ineffable, and the dwarves liken you unto a god. Your family, those you choose to ascend with you, become the founders of a new line of nobility. Indeed, every existing noble house among the dwarves traces its line back to a founding paragon. It's a rare thing, however. In my visit, I learned that only one paragon has been elected in generations, the smith Brank, exalted for her discovery of smokeless coal. I met the paragon Brank only once during my stay, and I consider it an odd occasion indeed. Surrounded by those of her house, this ill-tempered woman was draped in the finest clothing and jewelry, and was obviously revered even above the highest nobles, perhaps above even the king, yet she seemed to enjoy none of it. The burden of being a living legend is great, it appears. Statues of the paragons are found throughout Orzammar, though nowhere so prominently than in the Hall of Heroes, through which one passes on entering from the surface. It is a breathtaking sight to behold. Great works of stone all seeming to hold up the ceiling above. It's meant to impress upon visitors of Orzammar of all who have gone before, I think. It's also meant to remind dwarves going to the surface and thus abandoning their brethren forever of all they are leaving behind. From Stone Halls of the Dwarves by Brother Genitivi, Chantry Scholar. We read the last passage partly, right, in the notes about Orzammar that gave us the key to the city. Yeah, and I once again apologize for stumbling over the text. It's just the font is small again, and sometimes syntax is just very heavy, and I haven't read the notes before, and reading off the screen is tough. It doesn't excuse me, but it at least explains why I mess up from time to time. Orzammar politics. As dangerous as it is to mistake a dwarf's caste, it is far more deadly to mistake his alliances among the noble houses of Orzammar. Everyone in the city is allied with someone, whether by blood or by word. The nobles do not engage directly in commerce themselves, as that is the domain of the merchant caste, but they do serve as patrons. They invest in shops or in artisans' works and in turn reap a share of the profits as well as a measure of the credit. Merchants and warriors alike benefit from the service of a prestigious patron. The relative power of each house is ever-changing. It's usually safe to assume that whichever noble house holds the throne is at the top of the heap, but below that things grow into an entangled mess. Houses ally with one another by marriage. They earn rank and prestige when combatants loyal to them or from their own bloodlines win provings. They earn it when artisans they patronize become sought after or well regarded, or when the merchants they invest in become successful. The degrees of power that these achievements confer is so murky, even to the dwarves, that it is. So the degrees of power that these achievements confer is so murky even to the dwarves, that it isn't unusual for nobles to challenge each another, that's something new, to provings over whose smith forges better belt buckles or whose servants have the best manners, nor is it out of the ordinary to find two merchants arguing over whose noble patron has won the most acclaim, for the rank of the patron is the rank of the client. Nowhere is this more apparent than in the assembly, where the Deshirs, a representative of each noble house, meet. Although the king technically rules Orzammar, kings are elected by the assembly, and so each king must work constantly to maintain the support of the Deshirs. Kings who prove unpopular find their heirs deemed unacceptable to inherit the throne. Power then passes to another house. From In Pursuit of Knowledge, The Travels of a Chantry Scholar by Brother Genitivi. The Proving. Valos Atreides, in the 23rd year of the reign of King Ragnar Educan, an old man of the servant caste was accused of stealing a sapphire ring from his employer, Lord Dace. The servant was stripped of his position, he and his family thrown to the streets, and soon after the servant died. The son of the disgraced servant challenged Lord Dace to a proving, declaring that his father had been the victim of a cruel injustice and the ancestors would bear him witness. Lord Dace had no choice but to accept. On the sacred stone of the proving ground, the nobleman faced the servant boy. Lord Dace carried a sword crafted for his own hand and was clad in his great-grandfather's armor. The servant boy had neither armor nor weapon. When the battle began, the boy fought like a whole pack of angry deep-stalkers, flinging himself upon the startled lord, wrenching the sword from his hand and prying at his armor with bare fingers. The boy knocked Lord Dace to the ground and beat him until the lord begged for mercy. The boy and his family were reinstated to their place in the Dace household, and the virtue of the boy's father wasn't questioned again. The ancestors had spoken, and no one would question their word, as told by Shaper Vortag. Dwarven Faith. The chant of light is almost never heard in the halls of Orzammar. This is hardly surprising, for unlike the elves, who were literally abandoned by their gods, or the Tevinters, who worship dragons, the dwarves have no gods at all. Even the concept of worship is foreign in Orzammar. Instead, the dwarves seem to venerate the stone, a name they give to the earth itself. This seems practical for a people living underground, if perhaps a bit unimaginative. For guidance in spiritual matters, they turn to their ancestors. These ancestors, who are said to have returned to the stone, communicate their wishes to the living via brutal trials by combat called provings. The ancestors' collective wisdom is maintained by the Shepherd, which can apparently store records in Lyrium itself. Set above the ancestors, above even kings, are the paragons, dwarves who have achieved such greatness that they are elevated almost to godhood. These are the great figures holding up the hallway that leads from the surface, the first glimpse of Orzammar that outsiders see. From In Pursuit of Knowledge, The Travels of a Chantry Scholar by Brother Genitivi. Orzammar History, Chapter 1. The memories tell us that our kingdom once reached far beneath the mountains, and that the Thaigs were almost beyond counting. Kal Sharok was the capital then, home to all the noble houses, and Orzammar was simply the home of the miner and smith castes. It was with the Tevente Imperium that things changed. Paragon Garal moved the seat of power to Orzammar to more closely oversee the trade that began with the surface. It deemed that our people were entering a new age of prosperity. The memories hold no explanations for the coming of the Darkspawn, only questions. At first they were rumors, noises in the deep roads, a lost traveler here and there. The war caste sent men to patrol the road and thought the matter settled. We didn't know that while we searched for them, they were engaged in a search of their own. Sleeping deep in the stone itself was the archdemon. They found him and awakened him, and the blight began. The Darkspawn poured out of the deep roads like smoke, then, and the warrior caste struggled to hold them back. Countless Thaigs were lost in that first blight. But as ever, in the worst moments of our need, a paragon rose. Paragon Adukan led the defenses of Orzammar, and the Dark Horde was beaten back. The cost of victory, however, was great. Much of the deep roads were sealed to hold back the Darkspawn, cutting off Thaigs and even whole cities forever. Orzammar as a kingdom, as told by Shaper Tibor. Chapter 2 of Orzammar History. We were losing the war against the Darkspawn, slowly, a few men at a time, but losing all the same. The warrior caste was dwindling with each generation as more able-bodied men perished in their prime without fathering sons. With each generation, more of the deep road had to be sealed, more Thaigs lost forever. The kings of Orzammar watched and wondered how long it would be until nothing remained of our people but in memories. But the memories. And then Paragon carried in a rose from the smith caste with a new weapon, golems. Giant soldiers of living stone and metal, each one was an army. With the Paragon's golems, we began to retake the lands we had lost. For a while, there was hope that victory, final victory, was coming. But at the height of the war, Paragon Caridin disappeared, and with him, the means to make golems. Several forays were made into the deep roads to search for the Paragon, but nothing was ever found. Over time, the golems we had were damaged beyond repair, and we began our slide once again toward extinction. Orzammar as a kingdom, as told by Shaper Tibor. Parvolen, the occupied north. In the 30th year of the Steel Age, the first Kunari ships were sighted off the coast of Parvolen in the far north, marking the beginning of a new age of warfare. History calls this the first Kunari War, but it was mostly a one-sided bloodbath, with the Kunari advancing far into the mainland. Kunari warriors in glittering steel armor carved through armies with ease. Their cannons, the likes of which our ancestors had never seen, reduced city walls to rubble in a matter of seconds. Stories of Kunari occupation vary greatly. It is said they dismantled families and sent captives to learning camps for indoctrination into their religion. Those who refused to cooperate disappeared to mines or construction camps. For every tale of suffering, however, there is another of enlightenment deriving from something called the Kun. This is either a philosophical code or a written text that governs all aspects of Kunari life, perhaps both. One converted Seheran reported pity for those who refused to embrace the Kun, as if the conquerors had led him to a sort of self-discovery. For all my life I followed the Maker wherever his path led me, he wrote, but in the Kun I have found the means to travel my own path. It has been said that the most complete way to wipe out a people is not with blades but with books. Thankfully, a world that had repelled four blights would not easily bow to a foreign aggressor, and so the exalted marches began. The greatest advantage of the Chantry-led forces was the Circle of Magi. For all their technology, the Kunari appeared to harbor great hatred for magic. Faced with cannons, the Chantry responded with lightning and balls of fire. The Kunari armies lacked the sheer numbers of humanity. So many were slain at Marna's Pal on both sides that the Vale is said to be permanently sundered, the ruins still plagued by restless corpses. But each year, the Chantry pushed further and further into the Kunari lines, although local converts to the Kun proved difficult to return to Andraste's teachings. By the end of the Storm Age, the Kunari were truly pushed back. Rivain was the only human land that retained the Kunari religion after being freed, and its rulers attempted to barter a peace. Most human lands signed the Lomerin Accord, excepting the Tevinter Imperium. It's a shaky peace that has lasted to this day. From the exalted marches and examination of Chantry warfare by Sister Petrine, Chantry scholar. These Kunari people are such troublemakers. Okay, we have the final section, books and songs. That was quite challenging reading, I should say. Meditations and Odes to Bees. Oh, fair damsel of the garden, or less of honeysuckle and rose, I humbly beg your gracious pardon for the offense that here arose. Surely your work is far too vital to be interrupted by one like me. I am in no way entitled to earn the notice of a honeybee. I was a fool to pluck that flower for my lady fair. On my honor I swear to bring you dozens more within the hour, if you give me leave to try. Listen, traveler, if you would walk the garden path some spring, mind that you don't trespass, for the gardeners do sting. Anonymous. Oh, that's a refreshingly nice poem in an RPG game. The History of the Chantry, Chapter 2, 3, and 4. When the prophet Andraste and her husband Mephorath arrived at the head of the barbarian horde, southern Tevinter was thrown into chaos. The Imperium had defended against invasions in the past, but now they stood without the protection of their gods, with their army in tatters and their country devastated by the blight. Many felt that the timing of the invasion was yet another of the Maker's miracles in Andraste's campaign to spread his divine word. Andraste was more than simply the wife of a warlord, after all. She was also the betrothed of the Maker, enraptured by the melodic sound of her voice as she sang to the heavens for guidance. The Maker himself appeared to Andraste and proposed that she come with him, leaving behind the flawed world of humanity. In her wisdom, Andraste pleaded with the Maker to return to his people and create paradise in the world of man. The Maker agreed, but only if all of the world would turn away from the worship of false gods and accept the Maker's divine commandments. Armed with the knowledge of the one true God, Andraste began the exalted march into the weakened Imperium. One of the Maker's commandments, that magic should serve man rather than rule over him, was as honey to the souls of the downtrodden of Tevinter who lived under the thumbs of the Magisters. Word of Andraste's exalted march, of her miracles and military successes, spread far and wide. Those in the Imperium who felt the old gods had abandoned them eagerly listened to the words of the Maker. Those throngs of restless citizens that destroyed temples now did so in the name of the Maker and his prophet Andraste. As Mephorath's armies conquered the lands of southern Tevinter, so did Andraste's words conquer hearts. It is said that the Maker smiled on the world at the Battle of Valerian Fields, in which the forces of Mephorath challenged and defeated the greatest army Tevinter could muster. The southern reaches of the mighty Imperium now lay at the mercy of the barbarians. Faith in the Maker, bolstered by such miracles, threatened to shake the foundations of the Imperium apart. Of course, the human heart is more powerful than the greatest weapon, and when wounded, it is capable of the blackest of deeds. From Tales of the Destruction of Thedas by Brother Genitivi, Chantry scholar. I'm reading this and I'm kind of shuddering in disgust. I mean, the Maker, looking at how throngs of people were slaughtering other throngs of people, this is disgusting. Disgusting. Tales. It is said that at the Battle of Valerian Fields, Mephorath stood and looked out over his armies. He had conquered the southern reaches of the greatest empire the world had ever known and built splintered barbarian clans into a force to be feared. With pride in his heart, he turned to congratulate his men and found that they had turned from him. Mephorath fell to the evil of jealousy. After all that he had done, his wife was one to receive all the glory. He saw his wife's power and influence and tired of his place as second husband below the Maker. His heart swelled with fury. If he had conquered just to have his wife wrested from him by a forgotten god and the legion of fate-hungry rebel, then perhaps this war wasn't worth the trouble. Here history and the chant of light come apart. History tells us that Mephorath looked north into the Central Imperium and saw nothing but more war against a rapidly regrouping army, and he despaired. The chant of light holds that Mephorath chafed with jealousy of the Maker and jealously of the glory that Andraste received, although it was he who led the armies. Mephorath traveled to the imperial capital of Minrathous to speak with the Archon Hessarian. There he offered up his wife to the Imperium in return for a truce that would end hostilities once and for all. The Archon, eager to put down the voice of the prophet that stirred his own people against him, agreed. Mephorath led Andraste into an ambush, where she was captured by imperial agents, putting an end to her exalted march. Crowds of loyalists stood in the central square of Minrathous to watch Andraste's execution. By command of the Archon, she was burned at the stake in what the Imperium believed to be the most painful punishment imaginable. According to the chantry, however, Andraste was instead purified and made whole by the flames, ascending to life at her Maker's side. By all accounts, there was only silence where the expected screams. At the sight of the prophet burning, the crowds were filled with a profound guilt, as if they had participated in a great blasphemy. So moving was the moment that the Archon himself drew the sword and thrust it into the prophet's heart, ending her torment and leaving those assembled to consider the weight of what they had seen. Whereas the execution of Andraste was meant to be a symbol of defeat for the faith of the Maker, in truth it all but sealed the fate of the worship of the old gods and paved the way for the spread of the Maker's chant. Tales of the Destruction of Tedas by Brother Genitivi, Chantry Scholar. The History of the Chantry, Chapter 4. The crowds present at the death of Andraste were right to feel despair. It is believed that the prophet's execution angered the Maker, and he turned his back on humanity once more, leaving the people of Thedas to suffer in the dark. In these dark times, mankind scrambled for a light, any light. Some found comfort in demonic cults that promised power and riches in return for worship. Others prayed to the old gods for forgiveness, begging the great dragons to return into the world. Still, others fell so low as to worship the darkspawn, forming vile cults dedicated to the exaltation of evil in its purest form. It is said that the world wept as its people begged for a savior who would not come. Andraste's followers, however, didn't abandon her teachings when she died. The cult of Andraste rescued her sacred ashes from the courtyard in Minrathous after her execution, stealing them away into a secret temple. The location of that temple has long been lost, but the ashes of Andraste served as a symbol of the enduring nature of the faith in the Maker, that humanity could earn the Maker's forgiveness despite its grievous insult to him. With time, the cult of Andraste spread and grew, and the chant of light took form. Sing this chant in the four corners of Thedas, it was said, and the world would gain the Maker's attention at last. As the chant of light spread, the cult of Andraste became known as the Andrastian chantry. Those who converted to the chantry's beliefs found it their mission to spread Andraste's word. There were many converts, including powerful people in the Imperium and in the city-states of what is now Orlais. Such was the power of Maker's word that the young king Draken undertook a series of exalted marches meant to unite the city-states and create an empire solely dedicated to the Maker's will. The Orlesian Empire became the seat of the chantry's power, the grand cathedral in Val Rio, the source of the movement that birthed the organization, the organized chantry as we know it today. Draken, by then Emperor Draken I, created the Circle of Magi, the Order of Templars, and the Holy Office of the Divine. Many within the chantry revere him nearly as equal with Andraste herself. The modern chantry is a thing of faith and beauty, but it's also a house of necessity, protecting Thedas from powerful forces that would do it harm. Where the great wardens protect the world from the blights, the chantry protects mankind from itself. Most of all, the chantry works to earn the Maker's forgiveness so that one day he'll return and transform the world into the paradise it was always meant to be. From the Tales of the Destruction of Thedas by Brother Genitivi, chantry scholar. What rubbish, what absolute filthy rubbish, the story of the chantry and the Maker. I cannot believe that such an intelligent man, Brother Genitivi, is telling that. Feast Day Fish. Much better read. Fluffy mackerel pudding. 2 stalks celery, 1 green pepper, half a pound of poached mackerel, 1 small onion finely diced, 2 teaspoons mustard, 1 tablespoon salt. Why? Maybe they're both teaspoons. Half teaspoon ground Antivan pepper, 8 teaspoons ground mace, dash ground cardamom seed, 2 eggs beaten, 2 eggs boiled and sliced for garnish. This book, found in Arl Eamon's estate, naturally falls open to this page. The First Blight, Chapter 2. People today have little concept of the consequences of the second sin. Oh, believe me when I say that when asked, pious, chantry-going folk will curse the use of foul magic, spitting and snapping their fingers, but none live today who actually remember the horror that was unleashed so very long ago. Whatever records might have existed regrettably didn't survive the chaos and ignorance that was to follow. We have only the tales of survivors handed down through the murky ages and the dogma of the chantry to instruct us, and that is precious little indeed. I believe I'm not understating when I say that the second sin unleashed the bane of all life upon Thedas. The Darkspawn are more virulent than the worst plague, a heartless force of nature that came into our world like an ill wind. We know from accounts of later blights, as these Darkspawn invasions came to be called, never has a more appropriate name existed, that the Darkspawn spread disease and famine wherever they tread. The earth itself is corrupted by their presence, the sky rolling with angry black clouds. I do not exaggerate, my friends, when I say that a mass gathering of Darkspawn is an omen of dread cataclysm. It is said that those cursed magisters who became the first Darkspawn scratched at the very earth to find solace in the darkness of the dwarven deep roads, and there in the shadows they multiplied. Whether by intelligent design or by some last vestige of worship in their minds, they attempted to locate the old gods they had once served. They found what they sought, Dumat, first among the old gods, once known as the Dragon of Silence, before the Maker imprisoned him and all his brethren beneath the earth for the first sin, usurping the Maker's place in mankind's heart. The slumbering dragon awoke, freed from the Maker's prison by his twisted followers, and became corrupted himself. Dumat was transformed into the first archdemon, his great and terrible power given will by a rotten, unholy mind. With the Darkspawn horde following, Dumat rose and took wing in the skies once again, bringing ruin to the world the Maker had created. The old god had become the eye of a dark storm that would ravage the entire world. From Tales of the Destruction of Thedas by Brother Genitivi, Chantry Scholar. Chapter 3 of the First Blight. The world during the First Blight was different from the world we know today. Aside from the civilized rule of the Imperium, humans as a race were largely barbarous and splintered, divided into clans and tribes and squabbling amongst ourselves for resources. At the same time, deep beneath Thedas' great mountain ranges spanned a dwarven culture as organized and advanced as ours was primitive. As Darkspawn bubbled up to the surface from the underground layers, mankind first buckled and then fought back. The armies of Tevinter attempted to face down the multitudes of twisted creatures and the horrid rotting of the land around them, but they couldn't be everywhere at once. Human history remembers the First Blight as a time of terrible devastation, and those stories are accurate, but in our arrogance we often forget the price paid by the dwarves and their isolated mountain kingdoms. The dwarves faced far greater hordes than humanity as the Darkspawn challenged them for control of the underground. Despite the might and technology the dwarves brought to bear, the savage Darkspawn tore through them, first destroying the more remote taigas before swallowing up entire kingdoms. Think of it, an entire civilization lost in the space of decades. Compared to the near genocide that the dwarves faced, what we humans call the First Blight must have seemed a mere skirmish. Against the Darkspawn, the dwarven lands have always borne the brunt of the fighting and the majority of the sacrifices. Just a moment. For dwarven kingdoms finally managed to combine their might and fight back, and the cooperation saved them. But for the rest of their lands it was too late. Darkspawn had taken the deep roads, the majestic underground passages that linked dwarven lands throughout Thedas. The Darkspawn could now attack anywhere on the surface through these tunnels. Humanity simply wasn't prepared for such an onslaught. It was clear that the warfare we knew wouldn't avail us. We had to find a new way to fight. Thus came our salvation. The Grey Wardens were born. From Tales of the Destruction of Thedas by Brother Genetivi, Chantry Scholar. The First Blight, Chapter 4. Founded at Weishaupt Fortress in the Underfalls, the Grey Wardens offered humanity hope in its darkest hour. Veterans of decades of battles with the Darkspawn came together, and the best amongst them pledged to whatever was necessary to stem the tide of darkness that swept across the land. These great humans, elves, and dwarves pooled their knowledge of the enemy and formed a united front to put a stop to the archdemon's rampage. And stop it they did. Ballads are still sung today of the first Grey Warden's charge into the waves of Darkspawn at the city of Nordbotten, each warden facing 10 or 20 Darkspawn at a time. Squadrons of Grey Wardens mounted on their mighty griffins, soaring through the blackened skies and battling the terrible archdemon with spear and spell. Oh, what a sight it must have been. Incredibly, the Grey Wardens won that first battle. They raised the armies in victory, and suddenly there was hope. The Grey Wardens led the lands of man and the last stalwart defenders of the dwarven halls against the hordes of the archdemon Dumat for the next 100 years, gaining and losing ground but never backing away. From all over Thedas, they recruited whoever possessed the skill and strength to raise the Grey Warden's banner, making no distinction between elven slave or human nobleman, and finally, nearly 2 centuries after the first old god rose from the earth, the Grey Wardens assembled the armies of men and dwarves at the Battle of Silent Fields. It was then that Dumat finally fell and the First Blight ended. The Tevinter Imperium would face a new challenge with the coming of the Prophet Andraste. Thoughts of the Blight grew distant. With Dumat's defeat, the Darkspawn were no longer considered a threat, but with the wisdom of hindsight, we know that conceit proved foolish indeed. The task of the Grey Wardens was far from over. From Tales of the Destruction of Thedas by Brother Genetivi, Chantry Scholar. Writing down some words to refresh upon. And the final note, the sermons of Divine Renata I. The weakness of mortal will is the great failing of all the Maker's children. We trade our honor as if it were the cheapest of currency. We do not understand what integrity is or what it is truly worth. From this ignorance, original sin was born. Sometime each of us has thought, what does it matter if I keep hold of my integrity? And but one mortal, powerless. How blind we are. The virtue of a single slave destroyed the Tevinter Imperium. The dishonor of one man drove the Maker from our sight. I tell you truly, nothing but the integrity of our hearts will win the love of the Maker back to us. It is all the power we shall ever possess to change this world for good or for ill. From a sermon on integrity. And thus we end the reading session. I'm gonna save the game here. Do you have Lake Calenhad? Interestingly, I don't. So let's create it. And I thank you all for listening. We had a nice hour of reading, hour and 10 minutes. So see you in the next episode. I think the final one. At least I think so. And take care and cheers.